All right, I hope all of you enjoyed the 4th. You are resting well today, recovering from all of your rest yesterday. Anyways, it is July 5th, and I just wanted to get a little bit weird on the channel, and I wanted to talk about some of the historical talent that the Detroit Lions have right now on their roster, how it's proving to come true. And what I've done on this, we've gone through this all summer, right? PFF puts out all their rankings on which position groups are the best in the NFL. The Lions are up there at quarterback. They're up there at offensive line. They're a top 10 defensive line unit. They're a top 10 defensive total unit. They're a top 10 wide receiver unit. They're a number 2 receiving core unit, believe it or not, or top 5 receiving core unit. The best running back unit. We've compared it against the NFL, but I wanted to do something weird here. And Independence Day got me thinking history. 249 years, I believe it is of America, right? If I'm doing my math correctly, 1776. I think that's how math works. It will be 250 in a year, the country will. But it got me thinking about historical Lions players of all time. And it got me wondering, which one of the players would you take on this Lions team? How many players from this Lions team would start if you started an all-time Detroit Lions team? And it's such a young team that it's hard to think about, so we're going to have to project into the future a little bit, but I think this is going to be a fun exercise that you're going to want to hang in here for and definitely and listen up to. So here's what we got. We'll go position by position. I'm going to say some of what are, the guys historically, and then we can move on from there and we can talk about our roster, and then we're just going to do a vote. And I want you to leave the comments. If you disagree with me on something, leave a comment. If you agree with me on something, leave a comment. Why not? And then I'm going to compare it to our current players and current lineup. So I'm going to have a little bit of fun with this. I'm going to have a little bit of fun. All right, here's our current lineup, and then we'll go with the all-time. Let's have a good time. All right, so first position we need to do is quarterback. So I'm gonna give you a few names here, and then we're gonna look at what we've currently have with Jared Goff. So current quarterback, it's not a large one. Right? It's not a large list. It's the honorable mentions are pretty simple. It's Jared Goff, currently, Matthew Stafford, Bobby Lane. Then you get into all right, Landry. But then it's guys like Danielson. It's guys like Scott Mitchell. Yeah, Dave Craig, maybe. I don't know. It's just a short list, right? So let's just go with Stafford, Bobby Lane, Greg Landry, Scott Mitchell. Ooh. All right, so with all that being said, do we throw Joey Harrington in there? I'm just playing. Who would you rather have as your starter at quarterback position? Would you rather have Jared Goff or Matthew Stafford? Throw it in the comments. All right, I am of the belief that Jared Goff might finish here ahead of Matt Stafford in a lot of areas and a lot of categories if he can stay healthy long enough. That is what my hope is for it. I am still going to give the edge at quarterback to Stafford, all right? So I'm writing this down as I'm talking about it because I want to know down the line, what is it? All right, the next position I want to go to is the wide receiver group. All right, so the all-time greats at wide receiver: Calvin Johnson, right? Herman Moore, Brett Perriman, Johnny Morton, Golden Tate, Nate Burleson, right? The Roy Williams, maybe we throw him on there. He had some really good years here in Detroit. I want to say made the Pro Bowl a few times. So that's a guy that you have on there. And then you have our current group. Would you rather have a wide receiver set of Calvin Johnson, Herman Moore, Golden Tate, or Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams? Does Amon-Ra make it? All right. I just want to be clear on this. I'm old enough to remember how good Herman Moore was. I'm also old enough to remember that he did a fifth of his entire production, over a fifth of his production of his entire career as far as catches go and close to it on yards as well. He did about a fifth of his production in his 10 or 11-year career in one single season. So I'm going to put Kelvin at 1, St. Brown at 2. So I'm going to go 1 past and 1 present. So I think we have a player that makes the team at wide receiver, and that is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm very interested to see what J-Mo ends up doing to see if he's a guy who can kind of crack this list. All right, the next one that I think makes the most sense to go to now is running back. We all know who the GOAT is on this. The question is, do you have 2 running backs? And I think you can only have 1. All right, the very, very obvious running backs that you have to throw into consideration here for the greatest of all time are Barry Sanders, Billy Sims. Let's just throw some other names out there, some blast from the past names, right? Guys like Mel Farr, Kevin Jones, James Stewart. Some of these guys, I enjoyed watching them run. I wish I could. I'm just going to give a shout out to Schlesinger, even though he's not a running back. He's a fullback. Just loved you. Little touchdown Tommy Vardell, also known as the Barry Sanders touchdown stealer. Barry Sanders ends with 99 touchdowns in his career because they brought in Tommy Vardell. All right, anyways, still liked him. But the GOAT at running back obviously goes to Barry Sanders. There you go. All right, now let's move back to offensive tackle. This is interesting. You get 2 offensive tackles, right? So what are we going to do with this? In my belief, when you look at our current lineup, you got Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell. I think both of these guys crack here they are, Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell. Both of these guys, in my opinion, crack what would be a top 5 tackles of all time for the Lions. But you can only start 2. Other great tackles. All right, I'm just going to throw some names at you. Lomas Brown, right? Jeff Backus. How about that? All right, if you want to go real old, you go Lou Creekmore back in the 50s, things like that. I think here's the question. I think your 2 starters are Penei Sewell and Lomas Brown. I think those are your 2 starting tackles. And so that's kind of where I go with that one. You let me know if you think anything differently, if you think Backus or Decker deserve a starting spot over Lomas Brown, but Lomas Brown's a 7-time Pro Bowler. What are we going to do with this? All right, you got it. You got to go there. All right, tight end. Tight end, there actually is some impressive things here. The best tight end we've had has to go to Charlie Sanders. He's a Hall of Famer. Other names on this list for who are our best tight ends that have ever played for us. Brandon Pettigrew. Most people don't like it, but he did do some things. All right. David Stonehand Sloan. Love that guy. He only played here for 5 years. Felt like he was here forever. All right. TJ Hawkinson, I think, would be one that you could put on there. Maybe special contributors, Joseph Fourier, red zone monster for a couple of years. Just stuff like that. And you have to put Laporta in there. So, again, if you can only start 1 tight end, it has to be the past. It has to be a player in the past. So far, let's get through the offense, and then we'll kind of go from there. All right, at guard. All right, you have guys like Rob Sims, right? You have Damian Woody that was only here for about 4 years. It was okay. Not a ton of just remarkable guard play other than like John Gordy back in the 60s. Stuff like that. Dick Stanfel, Hall of Famer, all that kind of stuff. Yep, you have to put that there. I don't like to go back that far. But again, when you're looking at guard, you would have to make the argument that, there's not a ton here. I don't think either of our guards start, though. So you have to give that one to the guards, all right? So I'm writing 2 of the past to the guard. And then the center, can I just count Frank Ragnow is on the team now, please? I wish I could. Oh, I wish I could. Kevin Glover was a phenomenal center, all right? 3-time Pro Bowler in the Barry Sanders era. Frank Ragnow was a 3-time Pro Bowler in a lesser amount of time. Other guys that you have to put up there are Dominic Raiola. I think that's kind of interesting. I think that's interesting. Dominic Raiola. How do you feel about him? Hey. All right. So center, I'm going to go with the best of all time as in an in-between because it's Frank, and I didn't know he was going to be gone. All right, so on the offensive side, you have 1, 2, 3 players that I think would make it if you brought in 2 running backs because I'd say Gibbs is the second best ever. And then the rest, and you can make an argument for Goff over Stafford, but he's not there yet. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. All right, best defensive edges. All right, Robert Porcher, hands down, he's the guy, right? He's the guy. Al Bubba Baker, Ziggy Ansah. There's been some players that have played on this defensive end position. Are you ready to put Hutch in there? Would you take Hutch over any of these guys if you were going right now? That's the question you have to ask yourself. That is the question. All right, defensive tackle. But in the past, I would say 2 past, just because there's some good players. I think Hutch ends up on that list as a starting defensive end for us. All right, defensive tackle. You had Alex Karras. Duh, he is there for sure. Ndamukong Suh, right? Sean Rogers. Haloti Ngata was here for a couple years toward the back end of his career. You got Nick Fairley, who was really good when he was healthy. I think, again, this is a loaded area, so you end up with 2 past players, and you forget how much talent this team has had. All right, linebacker. What are we going with here? Spielman? Yes, undoubtedly. All right. Joe Schmidt. Again, I'm taking out the really, really old-time players here in the 50s and 60s for the most part. So I am going to head and give a nod even to one of the guys that we have now. I mean, like DeAndre Levy, Stephen Boyd. Like, what are we talking about here, right? I think a guy gets a starting spot now, like an Anzalone, something like that. All right. Wow. Cornerback. Listen to these names just for a second. Lum Barney, Dick LeBeau, Darius Slay, Night Train Lane, Dre Bly. Like, what are we talking about? All right. And then at safety, all right, Benny Blades. He was the man. Glover Quinn. All these guys were phenomenal. All right. Louis Delmas. All right. Like stuff like that. I would take Branch. I would take Joseph. I would take him. You can say what you want about Glover Quinn. He was good. But never at the level of our 2 safeties now. I give both starters at safety. So here's the thing. When you look at all-time teams, all right, and then kicker and punter, Jason Hansen is undoubtedly your best kicker. You can make arguments for Matt Prater if you want. He wasn't here long enough. You can make arguments for Eddie Murray, all right, but Jason Hansen was better than Murray. The best kicker is Jason Hansen. The best punter of all time currently resides here. It is Jack Fox. He is the best punter we have ever had, period. All right? I know it doesn't count necessarily, but he is the best punter. And then, by the way, I just want to have some fun before I tally this up. Greatest kick returners in Lions history, Mel Gray, thank you. Desmond Howard was here for 4 years, I believe. Eddie Drummond, loved watching him do some kick returns. Terry Fair, like, oh my goodness. But Collie Freeman is up there. Collie Freeman is up there with them, but he's not the best. So when I look at it all, end up doing a long video. The players that I think you can make an argument when we look at our team right now, the players that you can make an argument for being on the list of a starter on an all-time team. All right, Jared Goff, you can put him on that list as an argument. Penei Sewell is on it. That's 2. Gibbs is an argument. St. Brown, argument / on it. So there's 4 offensive players out of 11 starters that you can make the argument that they would be on it. If we had our wonderful center, Frank Ragnow, still, it would be 5. On the defensive side of the ball, all right, I think Aleem McNeil and Hutchinson will eventually have an argument. They're just not there yet. That's the unfortunate side of it. All right. I think that Alex Anzalone has an argument to be a top 3 linebacker all time, and I think both Joseph and Branch would make it. Here's the point of what I wanted to make. The Detroit Lions don't have a long history of having a winning franchise, but they have multiple Hall of Famers and a ton of talent. They have arguably the best wide receiver of all time. It is Jerry Rice, by the way, if you're asking my opinion. They have the best running back of all time in Barry Sanders, and they have some of the best position players at Hall of Famers that we've ever seen. All right, so yes, I am absolutely realizing there's a lot of talent, but there's a lot of talent now. And when you can make an argument that a single team that's sitting out here, and I'm going to make the argument in 5 years that this team will have 10 guys. This team will have 10 guys that would be considered on the ability to play on the all-time Detroit Lions team. I think they will. I just highlighted 7 for you right now. That could be it. All right. Jameson Williams could absolutely be there. Hutch, McNeil. Like, I don't know what that's going to look like. All right. Terrion Arnold could end up getting up there, but man, that's a loaded cornerback room. Hutch is going to be there. So anyways, a lot of talent on this team. And I think that's really the whole point that I was trying to make. And I thought it would be fun to just kind of go back in history. If you're still listening to this, you're obviously someone who loves some of the Lions history. Give me a couple names that are some of your favorite players that I didn't mention. That'd be fun as well. All right, thanks for watching this. We'll see you on the next one.